All right. So, hi, everyone, and welcome to the Youth en Route podcast, Seeds of Change, stories from the front lines of the youth environmental justice movement. On this podcast, we will talk to different activists working on the front lines and understand the causes that they're fighting for. I am Samaira Yassin, your host and a passionate advocate for empowering youth through my role as a development associate at Youth en Route. Through this role, I have had the privilege of cultivating partnerships, meeting some amazing people who want to enable young people and amplifying their voices and position them as change makers in the society, in the community at large. Kevin is one such person, and we're very happy that he was able to join us today. Hi, Kevin. Before I pass it on to you, I want to introduce you a little bit, and then you can add whatever you feel that I missed. So, Kevin is not only a renowned climate justice activist and a community organizer in the US, but also someone who brings personal dedication to his advocacy. Kevin, your journey has, and I have told you this several times before, that your journey has been particularly very inspiring for us at Youth en Route. And I'm sure for many others as well who are working to fill the same shoes and working for environmental justice. We have read so much about your work online, and it was such a delight. But I want to know from you, what is your environmental justice story and how did you get started? What was the inspiration? What keeps you going?
Yeah, I guess to just answer that question, and thank you so much for having me, by the way, on this incredible podcast. And hello, everyone that's tuning in or going to be watching this. But my story starts at a very, very young age, actually, even before I was born. Both my parents come from India, a small village that now is large, and it's called a region of India in a state called Gujarat, but they come from small villages in the state of Gujarat. And basically, my parents and their parents and ancestrally, uh, my family has always been rooted in farming. And so we have a farming background. And so a lot of that has kind of, changed in India. It hasn't been it's not livable for a lot of those communities, and I think that is the reason why both my parents decided to move to the States for better opportunities. And not to only mention that the farming in India has only gotten worse because of the climate crisis, because of the monsoon season, because of the extreme heat, because of just the agriculture industry changing and shifting so much that it has not only made it unlivable, but it's also made it very difficult to make an economic prosperity for communities. And so that's where my parents really kind of decided to migrate from India to the United States. And I call them often climate migrants because of them farming not becoming as viable because of the climate crisis as well, that drives a lot of these social issues. And so while growing up, I think a lot of that farming knowledge that my dad had kind of was instilled in me at a very, very young age. We live in a community here in Los Angeles called South Central Los Angeles, right? And South Central is really kind of plagued with a lot of injustices. And one of the first issues that I saw was a food desert and how we're a food desert, and we have a lot of food insecurity and food apartheid. And so what that means is there's not a lot of access to fresh, non-GMO, organic, even vegan options, just for more healthier options for folks to really take advantage of. But what we do have access to is the fast food, junk food, and stuff that is very cheap and very accessible. But is it good for our health? Is it good overall for our bodies and our systems going forward? Or is that causing a lot of our health issues? And so I think noticing that issue so starkly and being coming from a farming family, although we don't farm here in the States, my dad, instilled a little bit of green thumb in me and said, okay, well, I'm growing my own fruits and vegetables, mainly vegetables and like Indian spices here in this small plot of land in South Central Los Angeles, how am I going to teach others that they can grow their own foods to become more healthier and eat healthier? There's other options for us. And so that's kind of where I got kickstarted. So like middle school is when I kind of really kind of started my activism. So at the age of 11 or 12, really kind of kickstarting my activism there. But I that's one story, that's one part, but also culturally, right? As a South Asian, as a Desi, as a Indian, we our sustainability, our sustainability is inherent to us uh, for South Asian cultures, for a lot of Asians overall, Southeast Asia and quite a lot of Desis, sustainability is inherent to our culture. It's something that, we don't call it sustainability, but it's just there. Like we're using plastic bags over and over and over again. So when we go, from the yogurt canteens, using that for storing food, just so many examples of that. Even with our clothes, when we wear the same clothes, we don't buy excessive amounts of clothes. Trust me, and we wear it till it's like you can't wear it anymore. And even so, like we fix some of the clothes so that you can wear it. And so that's just how, I was raised. And knowing that, and also knowing what was happening in my community, I think, again, starting with the food injustice and teaching my fellow peers in middle school how to grow their own food. A lot of them didn't even know that food came from the ground, which is a little scary, but we'll move past that to second semester, me being directly impacted by the air and smog pollution, and then realizing that these issues are deeper than just one inherent issue that's happening to my community. It's a multitude of injustices that are happening to my community. And if I didn't use my voice, and if I didn't speak out against these issues, then no one will, and we wouldn't get anywhere. We wouldn't get anywhere in the sense of getting justice for my community, and we will also not, kind of solve any of these issues to begin with. And so, kind of, that's where my activism journey begins, and then the rest is history in the sense that I just started using my voice.
It's amazing. So that's the part about your story that makes it, sort of so inspiring and also sort of unique, which is from for this is coming from one Desi to another. I haven't had a lot of people who look like me, meet a lot of people who look like me in this field. In fact, I have often, like when I tell people that this is what I work for environmental race against environmental racism. There's this whole movement we're trying to build, and oh, but like didn't you like get a job in engineering? Like, was that not something? Because it's so common, for so uncommon actually, to put it the other way, to see people like us in this field, and you're doing such a great job. Coming from that, I also wanted to ask you, there are some practices, of course, in our daily life that I'm very well, versed with, that you were talking about in our homes. They're still like, very, very much there, which are very sustainable practices. The practices of bringing that into your climate justice movement is one aspect, but I also wanted to talk about the value aspect. Is there something that you have um, sort of picked from your parents' struggles and like their experience living in India, and have sort of um, channeled those values into your work over here? And how has that, have you seen a difference? Have you seen a similarity? Have you seen a need for certain values more than others? um if you could like shed a little bit light on that.
Yeah, I think for me, my parents, they instill a lot of values, a lot of Desi values. I
Oh
think
yeah.
it's a sense of community, right? When when we turn 18, we don't leave the house. We stay, Asian parents, they love for us to stay in the coop, and they'll keep us until we are strong enough to go on our own. And once we're married, that's how it works. And that's just cultural norms, right? And I we come from such a our value base is a value base in the sense of support and care and love and community. And how are we not only there for ourselves, in our families, but also how are we there for others? And I think a lot of what my parents taught me is how can I not only care about what I'm going through and my issues, but how can I care about others? And I think for my activism, it has always been driven by the love that I have because my parents taught me that I can't only be, show empathy to myself, but show empathy to others. Because what has happened to me can happen to others. And so I think when I tell my story, I often leave out the element that, yeah, of course this has happened to me, but what is the deep meaning of why I spoke out? And the reason why I spoke out is because I wouldn't want, I wouldn't want what happened to me, the air and smog pollution and seeing all of these injustices and having to face them, and go in and out of the hospital for multiple years, right? Um, I wouldn't want that to happen to anyone in my community, let alone my family, the place that I love, the community I love, to be plagued with multiple injustices. And so I think that comes from the values that my parents set. And again, I can name a lot of them, but I think we get the gist is that it's love, it's empathy, it's community. And I think, growing up, you learn those values, but you also learn other values of like, how do you share those values with others and kind of carry yourself and understanding that you're not alone either.
Yeah.
This is something that, others feel this and others will be there with you once they see that you're doing the work that you're doing. It kind of reminds me of something that my mom said is that, it was a point in time that I was about to give up, and my mom's like, she says this in Desi language. She's like, "Bacha," like, she's like, in Desi tone, but she's like, "No, don't worry. Um, keep going, keep doing what you love doing. Don't let that stop you." And I use that and I used it and I transitioned it is that and I use it in my own way is that this knowledge that my parents share with me, I share that knowledge with others because that knowledge shouldn't just stay with me or my future kids.
Yeah.
It should go with the world. That knowledge should be shared. It's an sharing of knowledge is very, very important to me at least because I know the value to that, the value of sharing. And I only say that because I transitioned with what my mom said in broken English with some Gujarati inside of there and saying, like, don't be discouraged because you may be going through one thing, but others are seeing the hard work that you're putting on. And I transitioned that to saying, well, no matter what obstacles, adversities, or challenges, or anything I may be going through, I'm not going to let that stop me from doing what I want to do or what I love to do. I'm going to keep pushing forward because that is not only for, um, you know, my community. I never talk about the origin stories of that. I'm sure you've heard me say it. I'm sure others that will see this will look through interviews and stuff like that and hear the same sentiments. But that comes from my mother. So I think I've when it comes to values and how that kind of intersects with a lot of my activism, there's many. I can go into the cultural values, I can go into just values in general, but these are just some of what I've seen in my activism.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. I mean, absolutely. And I think it's such an important thing to name the sense of community, especially in
Yeah.
youth justice movements, because the road is not easy. If young people today were going to collaborate, build a movement, grassroots movement by themselves, launch a campaign, the road's going to be long and it's going to be hard. But that this is
Yeah.
such an important message, and I really hope our viewers are listening and they catch on to this one that just keep going. It's so important to just keep going because eventually I feel that one person starts, a few more join, and then there's going to be a caravan of people. And that's the most beautiful thing about these movements. And I absolutely love this idea of how you tied the home values that we're like talked about every day into and channeled it into like a bigger, wider movement. I love that. Absolutely. Even at Youth
Yeah.
on Route, we have been working tirelessly to sort of center low income youth and youth of color as changes agents in their community, which, as you know, by providing them tools for learning from each other. Um,
Mm.
this is very similar to the work that you've been doing. And I have been following the work that you've been doing with your One Up International Foundation. Big fan. But I'm curious to know your thoughts on the best strategies to maximize youth engagement in environmental justice conversations, because that I think is important not just for people just starting out, but also for some movements that have been in, have began as something really huge, had a lot of potential, but then that engagement petered out, that response petered out. So how do you deal with that? What are some strategies that you have learned in all your years of experience that you can share with us, organizations like us, and young people who want to create these movements?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I've learned over the years is that, it's t twofold, right? One of the things is knowledge sharing is quite important. We already kind of realize that of like, just by hearing from my parents and the ancestral knowledge that came passing down from generations, from the farming to, just the knowledge in general, that has equipped me to be the person that I am today. And if I can share that with others, then that can also spark something within that person that I share it with, or the people that I share it with, to continue their activism journey and shape what I said to what they kind of experience and the shoes that they're walking in, right? And the journey and pathway that they're leading towards. Um, I think the second being like, if we're able to really knowledge share and transform and reimagine our education system, we can reimagine the way that our systems operate. I
Yeah.
think one of the biggest things that we lack is imagination. We need to bring back imagination because I say this, and I say it to a lot of young people, and I say that if you're only able to imagine, you're able to create. And if you're able to create, you're able to create impact. Um, and it only takes your voice, it's not that hard to imagine because imagine the world that we want, imagine the solutions that you can create, and they can be outrageous. Hell, a lot of the work that I have done, it wouldn't have been possible if I didn't imagine what it can look like to work with one another, what it would look like if I can implement a lot of the same thinkings that were passed down to me into the real world, right? The Youth Climate Commission that I helped establish, and it's technically the idea that I created, would have never happened if I didn't imagine it.
Yeah, that's
Saying,
my next
it's a
question too.
bold, crazy. We'll get to that, but I think imagination is what we need more of. And that it can and get it really, it's like, how do we take this education system that we're creating, and we're creating an amazing education system, and I think we're always going to need education. It's a revolving door. It's not like one and done, right?
Yeah.
Climate education is quite important. And but also that intergenerational knowledge sharing hub is what we need an increased amount of. And then how do young people imagine, well, the world that we want by utilizing what they have learned? Or even so, what can they do to kickstart their journeys of like going outside into their community and looking at the issues that are happening, just being observant, and then imagining ways in which that they can solve those issues. So I don't know. Those
Yeah,
are some of the things.
absolutely.
I apologize. I left the window open.
Oh no, that's fine. I can't hear anything except like also I'm pretty focused on what you're saying, because like every time I talk to you, there are some sentences, some quotes that just come out. They're like, I want to use these again. But
Oh, thank you. I'm like, I left the window open and there's bugs coming in because we have a pond nearby.
oh, okay. Oh, all right. I thought it
Yeah.
was the sound that you were talking about. Yeah, I can't hear anything from that side. But
Oh,
what you were
yeah.
saying earlier about, reimagining and continuing to imagine, that is such an important thing, and that's something that we're currently working on. Our executive
Mhm.
director Rachel, we need to introduce you to at some point. But she just recently gave this quote, and it's amazing, it's brilliant. She said that um, the rules were made a long time ago, and we can break them and make them all over again. There is no
Mhm.
set way to do things. And if young people, and she always says that young people do things so differently, and so they're just, I don't know, inherently not constrained by what they have been told, that this
Mhm.
is how it works. They have that innate ability to sort of think outside the box, and that is so important. I think we need to also learn from a lot of these young people in terms of changing the systems that will benefit them in terms of doing that work in a better way, so that when they reach these places where we are right now, in maybe a couple of years, they have an easier system to navigate. I think that is also on us, but the reimagining part, I think they do it very well. I think we, as like the older people in this movement, sort of need to reimagine a little bit more and a little bit quickly to make things easier for them. But I am now going to come to my most important, most favorite part of this podcast, which is talking about your Youth Climate Commission in LA. You collaborated with your community in LA to create the first of its kind, I think, the Youth Climate Commission. Um, yeah.
Yes.
And the aim was to amplify youth voices on climate crisis. It is, first of all, it is commendable to take on something like that and be able to deliver. Um, I think for all fellow climate activists who are listening, it's crucial to also talk about how, first of all, how did this idea come up? What were some challenges that you faced in this endeavor? And third, how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I guess my journey for establishing the Youth Climate Commission kind of goes back into my high school years. Around 2017 and 2018, I was a part of a general mayor's youth council for climate. I was a part of a mayor's youth council that on general issues. The mayor's youth council for climate action didn't exist, and so my former mayor Eric Garcetti was actually the C40 chair, and I was kind of because I was part of the general council on for the mayor's youth council. I was kind of doing a lot of work, and I rose the ranks of that council, and I was invited to the State of the City address, which is this an address by the mayor on the state of the city, which was a huge honor, as a young person to be invited. And before the address that he gave in front of congressional leaders and other politicians and key stakeholders, he had met with a bunch of young people before that meeting. And um, at that meeting, I had the honor to sit right next to the mayor. And I just kind of whispered to him, I was like, we need something on climate action. I want you to establish the Mayor's Youth Council for Climate Action. And lo and behold, he took notice. And 2 to 3 months later, I got a call from the city saying, "Hey, Kevin, we're establishing the Mayor's Youth Council for Climate Action. We would love for you to be a part of the first cohort." And I still had to apply and still had to go through the traditional route, right? But I got into the first cohort. And now LA City is large. It encompasses, 4 million people, but it's just one city in LA County. LA County is 88 cities. And so because the mayor works with C40 and he was the chair of C40 at that time, we went ahead and also started the Global Youth Forum and also took this model of Major Youth Council for Climate Action and gave it to C40 so that they can start youth climate councils across the globe. And so now you're seeing like Freetown, the city of Athens, and so many other cities take on youth participation and start youth climate councils. And this was due part because of this one spark of idea that I gave to the mayor, the former mayor. But kind of locally, we still had the Mayor's Youth Council for Climate Action, but I really wanted to do something bigger because I was like, you know, LA City is amazing, but I feel like all these other cities that are surrounding LA City are going to be left out, and so many young people are going to be left out. So I created the idea of a youth climate commission. And with a good friend of mine, we went to the Board of Supervisors, which is, LA County's Board of Supervisors, which are five supervisors for five districts. And it's the, most powerful local government in our nation in the United States. And we proposed the Youth Climate Commission to the Chief Sustainability Officer of LA County at that time. And not even a month passes by, and we had multiple key stakeholder meetings, and we passed the Youth Climate Commission. So this idea of a Youth Climate Commission then got passed as well.
Yeah.
And that became the first ever in the world, first ever in the nation. But it was a gradual growth. So from one city having a council to then working with a global institution like C40 to establish even more Mayor's Youth Council for Climate Action around the globe, to then working locally, but in a larger area, LA County, which encompasses 88 cities, over 14 million people, to have youth representation within the county. And that was historic. And that inspired many other things to happen. And I'll go into it. But just now, this year, and last year, we saw the establishment of the EPA's Youth Advisory Council on Climate Action. And that was inspired, due part of the local efforts here by my idea of the Youth Climate Commission. So I kind of take credit for the EPA's Youth Advisory Council as well, if I can, a little bit of the ego here. But it also inspires policy. Just this year in the Senate, in April, we had the introduction of the Youth Climate Leadership Act of 2024. And that is really revolutionary in the sense that this bill directs, secretaries of agriculture, commerce, energy, and interior, as well as administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, to establish youth advisory councils for the proposal of providing recommendations regarding environmental issues as they relate to us as young people. And it also gives money annually, about $250,000, a quarter to $500,000 to each agency to propose, for the purposes of like operating the youth advisory councils. And then total annual funding is 1.25 million dollars. And so this has just been introduced by Senator Butler and Senator Ed Markey. Both of those senators have introduced it, and they drew inspiration locally as well from the EPA's Youth Advisory Council on Climate Action, but also from the Youth Climate Commission that was established. So really kind of seeing this idea that I had trickle into something much larger than it already is has been so rewarding to me. And I always tell young people is that you yourself have ideas, and you just have to keep pushing, keep utilizing your voice so that your ideas, your solutions get implemented, and see the impact that is not only created for your community, but for other communities. And so I think that's the reason why youth climate commissions, youth climate councils, advisory boards are so inspiring and so important to having actual youth representation within government and bridging the gap between policymaking spaces and young people. Because not only are we bringing the solutions and ideas, but we're bringing fresh ideas. We're rethinking in the ways in which systems work, as you mentioned, right? And if we're able to bring that reimagining, thinking to the ways in which our current systems are running, we can make the systems that don't work for many people work for all. And that's so important to have young people at the forefront of governmental spaces. And we're trying to do the same with corporate spaces, but that's for a later conversation.
Oh, that's an interesting. You've already given us the theme for our next podcast with you whenever time permits. But I also, I know we're short on time, and I know you're a very busy person. But before we let you go, I would want to know a couple more things. First
Of
is,
course.
what is something that you're working on right now that you're very excited about? And how can we, our viewers, and our youth community support your work?
Of course. So, currently, what I'm working on and how you can all support me is go follow One Up Action. We are planning to scale up. We are planning to increase a lot of the work that we are doing to support young people, not only across this nation in the United States, but across the globe, to accelerate and implement climate solutions. We have many programs. Two of our programs, the Action Innovators Fellowship, will launch next year, and the Youth Solutionist in Government Fellowship, which we launched last year, but we didn't launch this year because we wanted to really craft it a little bit more. We'll launch next year as well. And then this year we plan to launch a branch of One Up Actions, which we did a small launch, a soft launch in DC with the way that it will work is that we'll get young people from across the globe and domestically here in the United States, that have their own initiatives, that have their own solutions, that are working on incredible projects locally or even on a larger scale, to become a part of the Youth Impact Council and get amplification from individuals that have a lot of the power and access that usually young people don't have access
Yeah,
to. And
yeah.
our first ambassador for the Youth Impact Council, if I may add, is Sarah, the Duchess of York,
Oh.
really kind of being a youth representative for young people. And so we're really excited for a lot of what we have planned for One Up Action. Um, this organization was meant to be a platform for young people, but it's really transitioned to supporting and amplifying and also making sure that young people are the drivers of youth-led climate solutions. So yeah, really excited for that. Follow us on One Up Action. And then if you want to follow my journey and my activism, follow my social pages.
I am going to link all of that in the description. And if everything about One Up Action, any new latest updates coming, things that young people should be tracking, that your organization is doing, we're going to link all that up in the description. Before that, that brings me to the last question, which is I guess the most important question. In your years of working in environmental justice, in your years of working with young people, what has been the most rewarding part of your journey?
I think the most rewarding part of my journey is the ability to see community form and take shape. And I think I said it earlier, when we all come together, we're able to achieve more than we think that we're able to achieve. And that has been such the beauty of it all, is that young people are always underestimated and undervalued and not given the resources enough. But when we come together as young people and we know what we're fighting for, we're able to achieve more than previous generations. And I say this with a lot of love, is that we have to do this. We have to keep the momentum going, and coming together. And I'll add a statistic in here as well, just to kind of put a twister to what I'm trying to say, is that when 4% of all global philanthropy goes to climate, and out of that 4%, 0.76% goes to youth-led organizations globally, we have something wrong, because we're
Mm.
not investing in the next generation. We're giving them scraps, we're giving them crumbs. And I think what we need to do is see a transition of, no, young people are not just the leaders of tomorrow, they're the leaders of today and tomorrow. And I say that always. It's one of the quotes that I've, been quoted saying multiple times as well. But it's how do we empower the next generation as leaders of today?
Yeah. We use
And that
that
is
all the
making
time.
sure.
We took that quote from you and we use it all the time. We love it.
Thank you. And I'm like, we need to be moving resources to young people. And that looks like financial resources, that looks like resource sharing, and it also looks like how do we work with one another because we all have the same goal. you know it,
Yeah.
I'm kind of in my life, in my stage of activism, I'm like, okay, enough with the silos and echo chambers. We need to be breaking these silos and echo chambers and coming together as a community to fight not only for climate justice but for all of these other social justice issues, and really kind of dismantle and change and reimagine the ways in which the systems will work. And we will only achieve that if we only do it together. So
100%.
there's my kind of piece of knowledge that I would share.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin, for all your amazing insights, your incredible journey. Thank you for sharing that with us on Seeds of Change today. Your dedication to climate justice and empowering youth through One Up action, especially, is truly inspiring. To our listeners, if you enjoyed today's episode, do not forget to like, share, subscribe, and follow Kevin's work and Youth on Roots YouTube channel and our work for more such stories from the front lines of youth environmental justice movements. Follow both our Instagrams, Kevin's, as well as I'm going to link it all there in the description, as well as Youth on Roots Instagram to stay updated with what both of us are up to and all the other guests that we bring on as well. The idea of this podcast is not just to end a conversation here, but to begin the conversation from here. So until next time, keep advocating, keep inspiring, keep making a difference, and we will see you again very, very soon.
Thank you so much, everyone.